So.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is up? Welcome to our very first Career Days event for the Teen Center. We're very excited to start this process, and we got a great, I was about to say a great show, but this is my podcast. I'm thinking about my podcast that I'm doing. We got a great program for you guys this afternoon. And for those of you who aren't able to join live, we do have the recorded podcast, so you'll be able to check this out at a later time. Initially, what we're going to do is each Wednesday, we're going to have someone come and speak on a different career. Because we have high school kids, it's now a lot of them are looking for jobs, on the edge of getting into college, and they want to know, what is it that I want to do with my life? Very important. So we decided, while we're quarantined, while we're in our houses, let's gather as many resources as possible, as many careers as possible, and get this information out to kids. I mean, it's one thing I wish that I knew when I was going into college and things. Hey, what does this guy do? Or if I had like maybe a mentor, maybe, or anything like that. So we're hopefully gathering these speakers and this information to help these kids, to assist them as they go throughout their journey and try to figure out what they want to do in life. John is going to come and introduce Mr. Thompson a little bit later, but just as far as some announcements are concerned, we just want to make sure that we have all of your up-to-date information. So if your phone number, your email address has changed, please contact me and let me know so we can make sure that we're getting you the proper information as far as our database is concerned, as far as being able to contact you. And of course, if there are any needs as far as technology specifically, as far as food and services like that, please reach out to me as well. So those are the announcements. I'm going to let Mr. Thompson come and introduce his father. He is one of our own, and John, I guess he kind of volunteered as his dad for being the first one.
Sir.
We're appreciative of him being with us today, and we're looking forward to hear about the law enforcement career. And John, go ahead and introduce your pops, man.
So good afternoon, everybody. So I know I talk a mile a minute and I talk a lot, so I'll try and keep this short. But because I know my father's going to be saying a lot here too. But today I'd like to happily introduce my father, John Philip Thompson. We have different middle names, so I'm not a junior, just for the record. But John Philip Thompson, he is a several decades veteran of law enforcement. He transitioned into it from a career in brick masonry. And pretty much for most of the time I can remember, he's been in law enforcement in varying different capacities. When we hear from him directly, you're going to hear him talking from multiple different angles of law enforcement because he's been in multiple different divisions within different agencies, and he's been around just in terms of different types of law. So for those of you who are with us and who are either going to join us later or watch this video later, he'll be able to answer a lot of questions that you may have about what it's like to be in law enforcement, how to get into that career, and also the different options that there are in it. I know with pop culture, we do have that general idea of the police being, the guys out doing their beat in the show. But then, we do have at least more and more examples now that like law enforcement also includes detective work, which my father did, investigative work, which he also did, undercover work, which he also did, and many more. So I really hope you guys enjoy hearing from him. But again, I've talked a mile a minute. Now it's time to let him take the reins. So Dad, welcome.
All right. Well, John, I appreciate it. And I want to welcome everybody for the invitation, and I appreciate it. And I feel kind of honored to be the first one for your podcast. So I'll try to do you justice. But again, my name's John Thompson. I'm a John Phillip, and my journey and how I got into law enforcement is, I think, somewhat unique because, as my son, told you earlier, I was basically a masonry contractor. I was involved in the construction trade, had my own business for several years, and quite lucrative. I made a really good living, and then I've always heard my father-in-law, which is John's grandfather. He was in law enforcement, and his father before him was the chief of police in a small Georgia town in the north end of Georgia. So there, I've heard a lot of stories, and it sounded really good. It sounded like a noble profession to get into. And during that time, the opportunity came up, and I decided to take it. And so I started off my career as a detention officer in Hall County, Georgia, in Gainesville, Georgia. This was in the early 90s, so it was almost 30 years ago. So again, I've been involved in law enforcement for almost 30 years now. But and one of the main reasons why I wanted to get in law enforcement, because I wanted to provide my children. I know he's heard this story before, but I always felt a sense of responsibility to where, there were a lot of drugs being introduced into the schools, and it just wasn't a safe environment to what I remember as a child. And you hear of everybody, if not you, who. So I basically took that opportunity and stepped up to the plate and started my career in law enforcement out of the love for my children and wanting to do right and try to make our little area a safer place to live in. Needless to say, when I first started out in law enforcement, as from a career in construction work, I took a considerable pay cut to get involved. But as a career in law enforcement is a profession. It's a professional organization to where you'll actually, it's somewhat like being a doctor. You have continuing education. You have to meet standards every year, and you have mission statements. We're guided by the Constitution, particularly in what I've done. I've always been guided by the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution. It's actually helped me through my career quite a bit. But some of the things I've done in law enforcement, I started off as a detention officer, and basically, I think we were entrusted with over maybe 300 inmates that were in the system. And I know there are systems in Atlanta. There was thousands of inmates that you're entrusted with, and that's quite a big thing, is making sure they get their medical needs, making sure that we maintain their rights. There's just so many facets about it. Providing food and everything. It's just amazing what you had to do in there. But I was doing that for about 24 months, and an opportunity came to where I could I applied for an undercover position with a new state agency, and I was maybe one of 5 people that were picked out of a pool of 300 to be selected for the job. And so I went from a detention officer with basically no experience other than good street smarts into an undercover capacity, working undercover for several years. And throughout my undercover career, I've had a lot of good days, some bad days. There's usually, the good days, you obviously you make a seizure in drugs, the bad person goes to jail, and everything's fine. There's bad days, you have to spend 24 hours on a surveillance, being bored silly out in the middle of the woods or in a house, an abandoned house, you know, blocks away from something. But I done that. I left the state agency, became a deputy commander, and basically it went as high as I could go. And then I became a detective for Forsyth County Sheriff's Department. And I went straight into working undercover for another 6 to 7 years, and loved every bit of it. I loved doing what I did. I love meeting the people that I was involved with, even the bad ones. And as a lot of them would tell you, I probably made over 500 felony arrests to where I put people in jail. But there's not a one of them that would not come up to me on the street today and be afraid to shake my hand and say thank you for, you know, I know you're only doing what you had to do. And the biggest thing I remember about you is you were always fair with me, and you know, I appreciate that with them. You know, it's, you know, just because we're police officers does not mean we're not human. So got promoted to sergeant, and I went and took over a detective unit for a special victims unit, and became a lead investigator on many homicides. I worked a couple hundred death investigations. I've seen all kinds of all facets of death, from just natural dying, from suicides to murders to accidents, from babies to 90-year-olds. It's very impactful that you go through that. It somewhat changes you somehow in some ways. You know, makes you a little more cynical, but throughout that journey, a part of it, I've still been able to maintain a decorum to where I love life. And, you know, just because I've seen things that most people haven't doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not able to cope with it or anything like that. But I've really enjoyed my time in the special victims, especially in the areas of working cases with children being abused, and putting their abusers in prison, and just keeping up with them people, and being able to, you know, talk to them or have them talk to me throughout the years. And you know, I try to maintain as many contacts as I possibly can. I want to talk to some of the pros and cons of the job. In the pros, there's all kinds of rewards. There's all kinds of accolades that you can get in any facet of the job that you want to do. But probably some of the biggest pros are the interaction with victims, and being able to help them, being able to help them put something behind them, to have their day in court, and to help them finish their journey on the path of kind of getting themselves back on the right path. That would probably be some of the biggest enjoyment out of the job that I've ever gotten. And as I get older, I could probably still tear up about some of the things that I've done, because it just, you know, you really appreciate some of the people that you've had to deal with in that situation. Some of the cons, law enforcement is a profession. It's founded, or you know, the main people we get, or everybody we get in law enforcement, is drawn from the human race, and every facet of that, you know, you have good apples and you have bad apples. And throughout the course of my career, I've put in a few bad apples in prison. Would never think that these people would ever be able to succumb to something like that, and to watch them go down a slippery slope, and that leads them into prison for doing wrong things. It's really, really hard to see, but, you know, I do understand it. And you know, but the biggest thing I get out of the con end of it is that, you know, we have 99% really, really good law enforcement officers. And then there's always that 1% that really makes the profession look bad. But if you look at it from the perspective of that 1% or 1%, although they may do things wrong, they bring things to light that needs to be corrected. And through that, we're able to learn and to, learn from their mistakes and to interject that into our profession. And I see as the years go by, the profession still gets better. It's got a lot of growing to do, but I see it continually getting better, and it's a great profession to be in. Now I want to touch on the subject of, what are some of the related careers and what you can do in law enforcement. I could think of 20 or 30, and I'm going to give you the top ones off of my head. The first I started off with was a detention officer. A detention officer is a very important job. You're taking care of people. These people, they're still human beings. And as a detention officer, you're getting access into becoming a police officer, to where most people that hire you as a detention officer will send you to the post-certified school to make you a police officer. So while you're getting paid $45,000 a year being a corrections officer or a jail officer, your department will send you to post-certified school to become a certified police officer usually within 2 years of your employment. So that's one way to get in. Some of the fields, you have patrol officers. I was maybe a patrol officer for 1 year. Most of my career spent in detectives. And you have detectives, patrol officers, you have corrections, you have court services, you have victims advocates, you have juvenile justice, you have there's medical fields, EMTs, SWAT. Let's see some of the others that I can think of. I can't think of any more right off my head, but I know there's so many areas that you could specialize in law enforcement, and you don't have to spend just your total career in one area. And a lot of departments now see the need to allow you to grow and have a career path, and your supervisors and your executive officers, they watch that closely to make sure that you're in the proper career path that you want to go in, and they guide you into being able to get specialized training in those areas where you can achieve your goals. Let's see. I would think I'm pretty much coming close to some of the careers in my field. I do want to close out. I don't know if I'm running long or not, but I do want to close out that if anybody ever wants a career in law enforcement, it's never too late. It does require a certain lifestyle, but that doesn't mean that you can't change any lifestyle that you're in right now and can't get on that path to becoming a police officer. I would thought, in my 20s and teens, I would have never thought I would have been able to be a police officer. But, here I am. I've lived a good life and an honest life as far as protecting people's constitutional rights. And it's a very noble job. And everybody in here and involved in your career day, if you ever have aspirations of thinking that you could become something like that, I'd be more than happy to give you my guidance. I want to provide you with my email address. It's johnphilipthompson@gmail.com. And if you ever need to be helped through the process or to know the ins and outs and how to fill out the correct paperwork, I'd be more than happy to help you. And just rewatch this podcast. It's johnphilipthompson@gmail.com. And I'd like to close out that although there are opportunities for students such as your age to get into corrections at an early age, but I'd also recommend taking advantage of the technical college system or the Georgia Technical College system. They offer a 2-year associate's program that is basically totally free, and you can get an associate's degree in criminal justice, and that will help you walk through any door of law enforcement that you'd love to do. And if you're interested in getting into a federal job, it usually requires a 4-year degree. And also they'd like to specialize in speaking in second languages and stuff like that. But there are all kinds of opportunities. Don't think that you can't become a police officer, because I'm a prime example of somebody that did. I didn't have the greatest background, but I've changed my ways. I grew up as an adult and done the right things, and I was able to get into law enforcement. So don't think you can't. And I think if this is going to be the question section, I'll be more than happy to take any questions that anybody has, and I will be as honest as you possibly think I can be. Some certain things I cannot talk about, but I'm very honest when it comes to my career and what's going on. So.
Okay. I'm gonna ask. Hi, I have a question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I have, hi, I'm Miss Jasmine from the McNair site, and I have a student, some students on with me, and one of them has a question about the salary for law enforcement workers.
Okay. A general entry salary, like we all live in the metro Atlanta areas, I'm assuming. And most, if you just go in as a entry level person into detention facilities, it usually starts out about $42,000 to $45,000 a year, and that's insurance, 401ks, and usually retirement system. And once you get certified as a police officer, your salary jumps up usually $5,000. So, and because we have such a shortage of police officers, there are multiple overtime opportunities and extra job opportunities to where if you're making a $42,000 salary starting out, and if you enjoy working and you want to take part in overtime opportunities, you could start off your first year making in the mid-50s to upward to $60,000 a year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
That does. They're over here smiling at the numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Some years are lean. It's like right now. With uncertainties going on right now, there are all kinds of opportunities, but usually with deficits and budgets and the shortage of income coming in, there are times to where you don't get a raise, but the opportunities to work overtime are in abundance, and so that's always a good opportunity to make up for any lacking situations as far as not getting a pay raise. So.
Gotcha.
Mr. Thompson, you talked a little bit about going to the 2-year route to get that associate's degree, as far as a way to get into schools. A way to get into the career. Is that a place where a lot of law enforcement recruits during those types of technical colleges? Is that like a heavy recruiting area?
Yes, it is. I actually went through it. I was already an officer, but they they started the criminal justice program, and it is offered basically 100% free through HOPE and all the Pell grants, and it's a very economical way to achieve your goal into getting that foot in the door. Other than that, but and then the North Georgia University system also has a program to where if you go to school for a 5-year program in criminal justice, you're doing extra work in there, but you come out as a certified post officer. So you get your 4-year bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and you walk out the door with a job and a 4-year degree, and you're post certified. So that's a new program, a pilot program that is going to be spreading immensely. It's becoming very popular in the North Georgia college or university system anyway. So, and I think the only place that has that right now is in Dahlonega, Georgia.
I have a question. You were speaking about how you saw a lot of tough things. I wrote it down. That's what I'm looking at. But you saw a lot of tough things on in the field, or however you describe it. So how did you separate like those tough things and then coming home to your kids? Because you said you got into this because of your children. So how did you separate the two?
Well, I never talked about my job. I mean, a lot of this stuff I've seen with my family, but you have associates that you work with. I mean, and it might sound, sometimes we have to laugh about, and just come up with different things in our head to kind of, put yourself in the mindset and, and you just kind of have to wash it away when you're done at the end of the day. That doesn't stop you from dreaming about it. I still have a few dreams of some of the things I've seen, but I mean, you joke and you goof around, and it's kind of like it's a coping mechanism. Sometimes you cry, in private, but for the most part, it's just you get used to it to a certain extent, but you never do if you think about it. But
I understand. Thank you.
Here in Georgia, do they have community police officers where they are in the community, and that means like stationed in the school? Or do you have to be a certain rank to hold that position?
no, you mean as far as like being involved in like a school resource officers, or
Yeah.
actually I think Gwinnett County has moved to a system to where they have their own police department within the school system. But a lot of places have school resource officers, especially with, all the past shootings that were, going on in the schools and everything. And so pretty much the counties and the cities provide that service. And it's done on a, if somebody's interested in working with kids, like I work in the university system with college students, and that's like the greatest thing, getting to work with young minds and interacting with them and showing them positive things. And, and I imagine you guys have that same level in the high school systems, but it's basically, it's an appointed position. You have to apply for it and be interviewed for it. And then you also receive specialized training in several areas of that particular area, and what do you call us, school resource officers. So.
I have one more
Mr. Thompson.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, Gail, go ahead.
That's okay, thank you. So to be a correction officer, what's the minimum requirements for that?
High school diploma, a good driving record. Usually most places will ask that you be drug-free for at least 18 months to 3 years. And that's pretty much it. You have to, in good references is always a help, but lacking, I mean, you have to have the will to want to do that. I mean, it's really hard, but it's rewarding too, though, and it's a good way to be an entry level without having educations if you're not in a position to get an education. So, and to be honest with you, that's the way I came up. That's how I went to school later on, but that's how I came up through it. And I appreciate everything that everybody's ever done for me on that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Thompson, William McFarland here with Teen Center. Ms. Dunn, I just wanted to follow up on your question and what Mr. Thompson said. I worked 37 years in Atlanta public schools, and for most of that time, I guess almost 30 years, we had City of Atlanta police officers in the schools when resource officers came in, because they weren't there when I first started working. They didn't have them. They came about after Columbine. Yeah. But eventually, Atlanta went to their own police system, and they recruited police officers from the City of Atlanta Police Department, Fulton County, etc. So now in Atlanta, the school system, APS, has its own police department.
That's good. And I also think that in a way that, when they have job opportunities with with that system now, that these are people that want to work with children, and, that's a career path that they think that they would be comfortable in. And so I think you get a wealth of qualified people coming in there that are more suited for it than just anybody that, wants to, I'm tired of being a street officer and I want out and I'm going to take this just because it's going to get me away from that. So a lot of people are going into it now, and they're really well-rounded and well-qualified. Of course, then again, there's always that one that can make it bad for everybody, but for the most part, it's pretty good. And I like to see that, but I think that's the way a lot of places should go, is to have their own police department, and they can well be suited. They could better be suited for their needs for that area and their demographic. So.
All right. Is there any more questions?
So to pick up on the topic of education, I know since there are a lot of different paths to take into law enforcement, I know that criminal justice is the one of the main degree paths that you can take to get into law enforcement. But like I said, or like you said, since there are a lot of different paths to take, what are some other degree options or majors, I guess would be the better term, that you think could apply to a career in law enforcement? Say if one of our students in the future, they're interested in one major path, and when they come out, they get the law enforcement itch, and so they want to see if they can transition what they've learned and take it into law enforcement.
Well, one of the biggest degrees that I see that transitions into law enforcement is psychology degrees. Psychology, obviously, if the inner workings of people and how they think and everything is a desire that a lot of departments have, but that has been predominantly the biggest degree that has, made that jump over to law enforcement without having to, seek other, classes to become certified as become a criminal justice major. But and a lot of the psychology majors will offer that path. Some have a path towards the elderly people. Some have a path towards working with juvenile justice or working in a private area as far as these nonprofit organizations who deal with it. So.
Yeah, I just happened to get a Facebook from one of my former students, the Best Academy. He's at Albany State. He's majoring in criminal justice. Just got an A in, let's see, what is this? Organization and Administration in Criminal Justice. So it's Albany State has a program. I think Atlanta Tech has a program. There are a number of places you can go, collegiately to get involved in this if you want to take that. And I think, like Mr. Thompson said, the advantage of that is you come out with a degree, but you also come out post-certified, which means you can go straight into police work.
Most of the people that actually it's 100% job. Everybody has a job before they even leave. A lot of them will start paying them before they even graduate to be a part of their organization as a, say, a bonus, a signing bonus or something. But it's been a good process. And you're a student over at Albany State. I mean, that's management level, executive type stuff that you can take anywhere.
Right.
And it's an amazing career path there. I forgot to mention also in the career field of law enforcement, you have intermediate certification, it's advanced certifications, and then executive supervision certifications that gives you, there's like 4 levels of law enforcement higher learning that you can get, and all the way up to executive and management, which is, that's where the money is. That's what, if you're making, if you're in that level, you're probably in a 6-figure job, and especially in our areas. So.
All right. Well, I think if that is the last of the questions, I want to thank Mr. Thompson for coming through and dropping some gems in the area of law enforcement. And he gave some valuable information, And again, he has made himself available to those who are looking to get into that field. And we're going to get that information to you as well if you are looking to, reach out to somebody who maybe if you ask him questions. He said you can email him or reach out to him. He's very close to the program, being that John works for us, so he's not that far away. So we're going to get that information out to anybody that was not able to view this live. And again, Mr. Thompson, thanks again for your service, and thank you so much for taking some time to speak to our staff and our kids and those interested in the law enforcement community.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for having me. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service.
And you guys keep up the good work. So y'all take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Dad.
But let me go ahead and